Hard to skip. So great to have everybody here. Today is Saturday, September 25th, and here on the East Coast, it's almost 11 o'clock. I'm in my meditation students' home today, Naima, here in Queens, New York. So part of New York, you know, the New York City boroughs here, the New York City area. And we have some live people in the room with us too, as well as the folks on Zoom, of course, around the world. So we're just going to chat a little bit about meditation, how what I teach is different from what other people teach and so forth. Now, you, my meditation students, know this, but it's always good for you to hear a review of that. And some of the folks here have not learned this technique that I teach yet, and so forth. So it's going to kind of clarify some distinctions and so forth, but it's always good for my meditation students to hear a review just to remind themselves. And then we'll do a group meditation together. Any questions from my students who've already taken the class, obviously we'll open up for questions. We always do that to make sure people's technique is going easily and as effortlessly as possible so that you're getting the maximum results. And then we'll talk just for a few minutes at the end. We'll talk maybe a few ideas from my new book. You guys know about my new book, my purple book. Of course, all my meditation students, I've suggested that they especially read chapter 4, which is on meditation in the book. And then page 193, the essay in chapter 5 on page 193. Those are the ones that I've recommended that all of my meditation students especially read, but then obviously read any of the other 67 essays that are in the book. So I was just chatting with Erica here, who's here, lives in New York, in the New York area, and he is here with us live in the living room here, Naima's living room. And she was saying, before I started the recording, she was just saying that, you know, she's done a lot of different meditation techniques over the years, guided meditations, various types of meditations using mantras and so forth, and different kinds of techniques and so forth. So I was just starting to say to her, so I thought I'd turn the recording on and just share with everybody just the distinctions between what I teach, what I call turning within meditation, and other meditation techniques out there. And the fundamental difference is that what I teach, there's no focusing of the mind, there's no controlling of the mind, there's no concentration, no clearing of the mind of thoughts, there's no focusing on the breath or a mandala or a mantra, there's no focusing. And when I say focusing, I mean holding on to, or even thinking that you should be on the mantra or the mandala or the whatever that the meditation teacher may have given you in these other classes. And so my students understand when I say no focusing, they understand what I mean by that is no holding on to, and not even thinking it's better to be on the sound or the mantra or the mandala, whatever it is. In my case, what I teach, I give them a sound to use, and the value of the sound, it's different from what most people consider mantra meditation, because in mantra meditation in India, the term mantra meditation means a certain thing. Mantra meditation in India means that you need to concentrate and focus on this mantra that they give you. Well, I don't call what I teach mantra meditation, because as my meditation students would tell you, it's not about focusing on anything, and including the sound that I give them to think. And also some mantras have meanings, and meaning is important in those kinds of meditations. And my students would tell you that what I teach, the meaning of thoughts, doesn't matter at all. And in fact, the sound that I give them to use in their meditation has no meaning. And what's the value of having no meaning? The value of having no meaning is to the sound is, that's why I call it a sound. I don't call it a mantra or this or that. I call it a sound because it just, that's what it is. It has a sound quality to it. And the value of it having no meaning is that it doesn't direct our mind, because meaning directs our mind. Because I'm thinking the word book, I'm thinking, oh, is it a print book? Is it an ebook? Is it an audio book? Is it a, what color is the book cover? Is it purple? Is it green? Is it red? Is it whatever? You know, I mean, the word book has meaning, and therefore it directs our mind. The word book would direct our mind in all those different ways. I'm looking at, you guys can't see it, but you know, on the Zoom call, but I'm looking at a stack of books that must be like, what do you think? There's like 50 books there in this stack, you know, different size books, and they're all stacked up about 6 foot high. It's an interesting way. Now, if you wanted to read the book that's way down there, that would be a problem getting to it. But it looks kind of cool. It's a stack of 60 books, 50 or 60 books. So my point is that if you think the word book, you're thinking, oh, is it on a bookshelf? Or is it in like Naeem's living room? Where is it stacked up 50, 60 books high? How am I going to get to the bottom book with knocking the whole thing over? Anyway, it looks very artistic though. My point is that book has meaning, and it directs our mind in all these different ways. And so directing our mind, the way I describe it in this, in the technique that I teach, I've borrowed this analogy from a psychology professor from the 1960s. And I know it's from the 1960s because I taught this senior executive in a huge global insurance company. I taught him and the CEO and the CFO and the COO and all the senior executives, the senior vice president of this, that, and the other thing. And there were about 12 of them in a conference room. And one of the guys was the senior vice president of human resources. So he's the HR guy. And he raised his hand in the middle of the meditation class that I was teaching. You know, I teach a 4-day class. And so that, you know, it was one of the 4 days I was teaching them, and it's in the boardroom of their insurance company. And he said, oh, I had a professor at the University of Houston when I got my PhD in psychology. And the professor told us, all of us graduate students, this is my student telling me this, and he said, we were sitting there in class one day, and the professor said, you know what, we've been talking about the psychology of the mind about this and the mind about that and personality and all this abstract stuff about the human mind. Let me give you a visual that describes that so you can kind of have a visual image, because it gets so abstract when we talk about the mind and psychology and all this stuff. And the professor said, remember, this is at the University of Houston in Houston, Texas. So those of you who are around the world, some of my students are, you know, I have students in 52 countries now. I just went yesterday to my 52nd country. South Sudan. And Ethiopia was my 51st country. So yeah, it's like, anyway, around the world, because I teach, you know, like this on Zoom and so forth. Anyway, so the University of Houston. So to my international students, just if you don't know, Houston, Texas is very, very hot and extremely humid, a very wet, humid climate. So what they did in 1965 or 64, I Googled it once, the Wikipedia, you can Google, like Houston Astrodome. It was the very first enclosed football stadium, or, you know, baseball stadium, whatever, sports stadium. And then they had concerts and stuff there too, with a roof, the first one in the world. So it was on Time magazine, the cover of Time magazine, Newsweek, everybody. All the major magazines and newspapers, the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, the London Times, there was like pictures of this huge stadium with a roof on it. It was the first one. Now there's like thousands of them in the world, right? It was the first one, 1964, I think. And they could air condition it. So Houston, Texas, oh my God. Everybody in Houston, they're going to a football stadium, and you know, you go in and you probably lose 20 pounds of fluid, you know, just sweating, watching a football game or a baseball game in Houston, Texas. No joke. It was crazy. I went there once for business, and I was meeting with some executive, and he walked us to the parking lot to get our cab to the airport or something. And he said, yeah, it was so humid. We had suits on, ties on. Oh my God. And he said, oh yeah. He said, you stick any stick in the ground here in Houston, Texas, it'll grow. You know, you just take a stick of anything, dead, whatever, put it in the ground, it'll grow. Anyway, so Houston Astrodome. So the professor said, imagine he said to all these 100 graduate students in the psychology class in the 1960s, early 1960s, or maybe late 1960s, because after the Houston Astrodome was built. So it's late 1960s. He's saying, imagine yourself in this football stadium down the street. At night, it's dark. You're the only one in there. You're in the nosebleed seats. You're way up in the seats, looking way down at the football field. And there's this little 8-inch plastic bucket, little 16-centimeter bucket with about 10 to 15 ping pong balls bouncing in and out of it. He said, all of you students would incorrectly think that is your mind, it's limited to this little 8-inch plastic bucket, and the 10 to 15 ping pong balls like your thoughts, your emotions, your mental experience, your visual, whatever your mental experience is. Your mental experience is going on, all right? He said, no, your mind is huge. It's like this big, huge football stadium, the Houston Astrodome down the street. It seats like 80, 90,000 people. There's nobody there but you. You don't know how big it is because it's at night and the the lights are off. And there's this little desk lamp over this little 8-inch plastic bucket way down on the 50-yard line. That's what you incorrectly think. That's your mind, limited to this little. He said, no, your mind is huge. So I've taken the analogy and expanded on it and said, no, our mind is huge. And that's what my meditation teacher and my meditation students, I'm the teacher, meditation students, I teach them a technique that turns on the light switches on the rest of in the rest football stadium, but it's our mind, the vastness of our mind. It's huge. We just don't experience it in a conscious way. That's why you'll hear my students will hear me use this phrase a lot, expanding the conscious capacity of our experience. That's what this technique does. It expands not just our experience, but our conscious capacity. There's a big difference between having more experiences and having more conscious capacity for experience. Capacity means we're expanding our mind. Experiences are what our mind has. There's two different things, right? You got the experiencer, which is the mind, our consciousness, our awareness, whatever words you want to use, our soul, our spirit. People use different words. I use very simple language, simple English, because like I said, I work across so many different cultures where English is not their first language very often. So mind, the mind is not limited. It is this vastness that we don't use. And so what the technique I teach opens that up. It opens up, turns on the light switches on in the Houston Astrodome. So that I've taken the professor's analogy. I don't even know the guy's name. But I've borrowed it all these decades because it's such a great analogy, right? The 8-inch plastic bucket with the 10 or 15 ping pong balls, that's our thoughts, emotions, our ideas, or visual images, or any kind of mental experience is represented by the 10 or 15 ping pong balls. But the bucket, that's our conscious mind. So the other thing that our mind does, and I think I was talking to one of my students about this, and I want to start weaving this into my classes now, is that the other thing that this technique that I teach people, what it does is, it not only turns on more of the light switches on in the rest of the mind so that we can use more of our mental capacity that way, but it expands the bucket so that the 8-inch bucket is no longer small little 8 inches. Because what's the 8-inch bucket? That's our conscious part of our mind. So we wake up more of our mind, but we're also expanding the conscious part of our mind so that we can be more wakefully using these other parts of our mind that we have lit up. So the technique this is not something that Rosary and Cy and Peony, and I can see you guys, Shauna, all you guys are on now. I don't talk about, I'm going to start talking about this more in our classes. So some of you may have heard me mention this maybe privately to you or maybe in the class, but I don't consistently. I'm going to start consistently talking about this idea that we're not only turning on more light switches on so that we can use more of our mind, but we're expanding that bucket. That bucket is no longer just little 8 inches. Now it's 80 inches. Now it's 800 inches. I don't know what that is in feet, do the math, but you know, it's huge. 800, 8,000 inches. It's much bigger. It gets 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times bigger. That's our conscious mind becomes more powerful, which is why my students who've been meditating a while start to notice that in their waking state activity, they're more conscious, they're more awake, they're more alert, using more of their conscious mind. And the conscious mind it gets bigger in a sense, figuratively speaking, you know. So that's what I mean when I say the phrase expanding our conscious capacity for experience, you see, because so many techniques out there. I don't know all the techniques that you mentioned, Erica, but you know, so many of the techniques out there, it's about experience. And I've been in workshops and big, you know, 500 people, 1,000 people, whatever, you know, in an auditorium, and the meditation guru, and you know, somebody gets up to the microphone and said, "Oh, Guru so-and-so, I've had this meditation experience," and I said, blah, 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 and this happened to me in my meditation. They go, "Oh, that's such a wonderful experience, and it shows this, that, and the other thing." My meditation students will tell you, I do not emphasize experience at all, because experiences come and go. It's like, okay, big deal. Big deal. It's like, okay, how does that help you in terms of changing the structure of how you experience? That's what I'm about in my class. The technique and the way I teach it changes the structure of how we're experiencing, not just the experiences themselves. Those are fleeting, they come and they go. But when we change the structure of experience, that's huge. Like the difference between dreaming and waking, that's a structural difference. You could have the same experience in a dream as you have in waking state, but the structure is bizarre in dreams usually. You know, right? Your car can change into an elephant. I'm looking at a picture of an elephant on the wall. Your car can change into an elephant. It's like, it's not going to do that in waking state, guaranteed. Yeah, I would hope not. My car doesn't even change into a different kind of car. It doesn't even stay a car, a different car. No, it's the same car, you know. Shauna, did you want to say something?
I do, because you're talking exactly what's been happening to me the last few weeks. One, I started out where I would do repeat my sound maybe 2 to 3 minutes. I'm at the point now where it's like it's almost always 6 to 7 minutes. And so I'm having longer meditations, but I also just this week, I was like, all of a sudden, I suddenly feel like I'm so much more alive. My brain is like working overtime, and I'm getting so much more accomplished, and I'm so happy to be able to do it. It's amazing. And my meditation, when I get up in the morning, I do my meditation. In the afternoon, there's a point when I just hit a roadblock and I just have to sit and meditate. So it's like it's programmed into me. I'm now at my 6-month mark, but I have to do it. If I don't do it, I'm a miserable person and I don't sleep well. But I mean, I'm so into doing it. I do it. I try not to miss it. But yeah, I'm experiencing exactly what you're saying. My mind has gotten so much bigger since I started meditating. It's amazing. And I just realized it this week. I was like, oh my gosh, it has to be the meditation. So bingo, I'm a living example of what you just said.
Great, Sean. Thank you for sharing that with everybody. That's really good for everybody to hear. Yeah, it's such a simple technique, but in its simplicity, it's incredibly powerful. And waking up and having more of that mental capacity we're talking about during your waking state activity, Shauna, is huge. That's it. You get so much more done, etc. It's just more productive, more effective, happier, just a happier life. That to me, that's the point of living anyway, is, can we be happier and happier? Nobody is perfectly utopian-ish, happy in that way, but can we manage our life better, and can it be happier? Yes. And look, if sleeping and dreaming were enough to balance out our waking life, then nobody'd be stressed out and everybody be using their maximum mental capacity, and they're not. We know that. Everybody's stressed out in the world. I'm up to 52 countries, and it's like everybody is, because dreaming and sleeping are insufficient. They're just not enough. And so that's why meditating every day regularly, just like you sleep every day regularly, is important to balance everything out. But then once you start to have more balance, and you don't have to be perfectly balanced to have what Shauna is describing, but everybody's different, everybody's unique. And at some point you get enough, whatever enough is, and you start to experience like what Shauna is describing. And it's gradual, it's little by little, it keeps going. It's continual. There's no limit to it. How much more self-knowledge can I have? How much more wakefulness? How much more conscious capacity? However you want to describe it. It goes forever. There is no end to that. But it starts for each person, that when they notice it, like Shauna says, she's just really noticing it the last week or two. Everybody's different. When did that start? After 3 months, 6 months, 2 weeks, a year, whatever. But the consistency of the practice is important. That's why I've woven into my discussions. If sleeping and dreaming were enough, nobody'd be stressed out, and everybody is. And so sleeping and dreaming are insufficient. You add this different state of mind, body, physical, emotional, psychic, energetic, whatever you want to call it, this thing called meditation to the mix, then huge things start happening. For those of you who are my high anxiety students, I have many high anxiety students, the anxiety starts to dissipate. For other people, it's other things change. I have, a doctor who wanted to come today, but he's on call today, this weekend. He left, he has a testimony on my website about his blood pressure normalizing after 6 weeks. So 6 weeks, every day, meditating 10 to 15 minutes each time, twice a day. That's it. 6 weeks he had high blood pressure, hypertension, and he has a heart issue that he was born with. So he has to be very careful, and he takes his blood pressure every day. And he noticed after 6 weeks, his blood pressure was normal. And so you can be sure that he's going to meditate for the rest of his life, because, he's a doctor, but you don't have to be a doctor to know that you have to have a heart beating properly to stay alive. So anyway, so everybody, my point is that everybody's different at different places, high anxiety, heart issues, or just want to expand their conscious capacity. Everybody is in that huge spectrum, and doesn't matter. Everybody's getting the same benefits just by doing the simple technique. But the ease of it, that's what we were talking about, right? So I was saying, not directing the mind. Remember, we come full circle back to this idea. The sound has no meaning, therefore it doesn't direct our mind, like the word book directs our mind. Therefore, we don't get directed back into the 8-inch plastic bucket part of our mind, because that's the directing part of our mind. That's the waking state-ish kind of control, directing part of our mind. So the sound, because it's meaningless, allows our mind to get outside the bucket. It's a little bit of a trick to the mind, right? Gives the mind something to think, but no direction, because no meaning. Mind can start to get out of the bucket, and start turning the light switches on and expanding the bucket, as I just said. So, but again, it's how we use the sound, which is so crucially important. And that's what's involved in the technique. Okay, there you go. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So before we do a group meditation together, anybody here have any questions? Peony, Rosary, Sai, anybody? Any other comments or questions about meditation?
Actually, I have a question.
Yeah. Erica. Yeah.
Okay, so I understand, in terms of the, the consistency piece, and also like we're using sound that doesn't necessarily have meaning.
Mhm.
I guess one of the techniques that I also used to use was also like walking in nature and using that as kind of a that would often bring me into a meditative state, like in terms of like not listening to music or anything, but just being very present and in the whole, like in the breathing and walking and like observing the flowers and observing like the temperature and the weather and those kind of things. So in terms of, from what I'm gathering, is like this process obviously is very different from that, but is there room for things like that, where where you can actually like a more of a moving meditation?
Well, so here's the thing. That is, as you say, very different from what I teach. And is there room for that? You could do that after you do my meditation.
Okay.
So there's no conflict, if that's what you're asking. There's no conflict between what I teach and what other people, other technique people teach and so forth, technique wise. I wouldn't recommend somebody doing my technique and a concentration kind of controlling technique with the eyes closed. So that I would not recommend. But that what you're describing is no big deal. I mean, people could do that afterwards. It's no conflict, but it's very different. And here's how it's different. So like doing a walking meditation, you say, as you say, you can get kind of feel meditative. But what I'm teaching is a letting go. It's a letting go technique. That's when you're not focusing or concentrating on anything, including this sound, you're in a let go mode. And so you want to be sitting and you want to have your eyes closed, and you want to be like not driving a car. I mean, just to be explicit, I mean, I actually had a student say, well, Kel, I close my eyes when I'm driving the car sometimes just for a few seconds. No, don't do that. No, this is this is let go. True story. This is a
let go and grab you guys.
Exactly. No, do not. No, this is gonna let go of your body really fast. I'm telling you. No, this is let go, and what happens is you can explore parts of your mind. It doesn't happen right away usually in my students, but down the road. And by the way, just as to Rosary and Sai and Peony and John live on the call, just a FYI. I was talking to somebody, maybe it was one of you guys, I can't remember, somebody the other day, one of my students, I was meditating privately. I do that with my students whenever they want to. And I'm going to start doing an advanced class once every 6 weeks or something. I haven't figured out when to do this scheduling wise for all of my students. And we're going to talking about like what happens way down the road, because I do talk about it in the fourth class. I talk about preview upcoming interactions and kind of what you can expect, several months down the road and a few years and so forth, kind of patterns and so forth. But I'm going to talk about like way down as you continue doing this. Now, way down for some people could be 2 weeks in. I've had that happen. It's not common, but it can happen. It just, you guys have heard me say this a million times. It depends on the person. It's like everybody's nervous system and their life is like, you can't predict. But usually what I'm going to talk about is some really more advanced stuff. But so to this point, in your question about the walking thing, see, this is letting go. You can't do that when you're walking, right? You got to be where You don't be walking off a cliff if you're at the Grand Canyon doing your walking meditation as a tourist and like find you like a mile down in the canyon valley and 2 miles down. I think it's 2 miles is crazy. Anyway, no. So, but you're doing a walking meditation in some safe place. And can you do that? And does it feel nice and so forth after you do mine? Yeah, you wouldn't do it at the same time. Yeah. But there's no conflict. There's no conflict. And guided meditations, people want to do guided meditations after they do it after my technique. And then look, I've taught Buddhist monks to meditate. I don't tell them to stop doing their Buddhist meditation. But when they came back to my class and they'd sit in again as a refresher, sort of, I didn't call it refreshers back then, but they would come back and sit in. It's, I call it a checking. I used to call it a checking meeting just to check in, but now I call it a refresher. But same thing. They would come back and they'd sit in what we call the checking meeting then, and they go, I get so much more out of my Buddhist meditation now that I do this, this technique first, and then they meditate they're in the monastery. They're meditating all day, doing their Buddhist meditation. I don't tell people to stop doing what they're doing, but that's how it would fit in. Yeah, does it make sense?
Makes sense.
Yeah, good question. Anything else? Rosary, did you have a question?
No, I didn't.
Yeah.
You think I should have a question? I'm still half asleep.
I just saw you I just saw your mic was lit up there because it lights up on my screen that oh, Rosary. Yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So basically, what happened that, I was a regular meditator for a good 3 to 4 months, and it really helped me immensely. And thank you so much for introducing me to this. But I've taken some breaks. I mean, I was having a lot of things going on, so I was kind of agitated, and that's why, I couldn't really concentrate and make myself sit quietly and do the meditation. However, I mean, when you have this agitated mind, I mean, there's so much going, say butterflies going on in your stomach, for example, you're excited, but how do you get yourself into kind of, into that, that the calmer sensor is just.
The way you get into it is you just close your eyes and you don't resist the fact that you're feeling in an agitated state. Do you think when I went through my divorce, I was in a non-agitated state?
Really?
I was in a very agitated state, right? When I went through my divorce, 14 years ago.
Yeah.
All right. So every time I sat to meditate, I was in a very agitated state. At the beginning of my meditations, you hear what I said?
So difficult.
Very agitated state. Now, because I meditated correctly and didn't resist that, right? That's the instruction. All you guys know this. Don't resist it. And I just went with it. How did I feel after I was done with my rest period? I always have a rest period after the meditation. After the rest period, I felt great. At least better than I did before. I didn't feel awesome because I was going through this divorce, but I felt 100% better than I did when I first sat down. I wasn't agitated anymore. You can go from agitated to much less agitated, maybe just a little bit annoyed, maybe a little pissed off, but really pissed off to that. Or sometimes I felt really, really agitated. And then afterwards I felt, yeah, I'm good. I'm good with this. Move on. This is a good thing. So it's but you got to meditate correctly and you got to do it. When you're feeling agitated or feeling stressed, that's the most important time to meditate. This is people think, oh, but how can I get to a calm state? No, you get to the calm state by getting rid of the agitation, obviously, right? How can you get rid of the agitation? What all of you know this, all of my students, what's the worst thing? What's the worst thing to do if you want to get rid of something? What's the worst thing to do?
Hold on to it.
Push it, try to push it out.
Yeah.
No, not holding on.
Oh, yeah.
The worst thing is to try to push it out, right?
Yeah.
Right. What happens? What happens when you try to push out a thought or a feeling that you're having? It comes back 10 times stronger, right?
you're basically, you are basically attached to pushing it out, like that means you're.
That's
not
it.
thinking the way
It's
you-
it. It's it. You become the pushing it out thing, and you become the thing that you're trying to push out.
Yeah.
It becomes you. It's like 10 times, 100 times stronger. It's like if I tell you guys, do not think of the word hippopotamus, you can't stop thinking about it right now,
Yeah.
right? Do not think of hippopotamus. Why is he saying hippopotamus? Oh, you just thought it. You know, it's too late, right? And you can't stop thinking, Kelvin said hippopotamus all day. I'm thinking about hippopotamus now. He said, why did he say that? You know, it's just, right. Fundamental principle of every human mind. Trying or pushing, same thing. Pushing out, trying, same thing. Trying always creates more activity in the human mind. Always. Trying always creates more activity. So if you're trying to relax, you're not going to relax. Trying to feel calm, you're not going to feel calm because it's going to create more activity, which is the opposite of feeling relaxed and calm. Trying always creates more activity in the mind. Always. Fundamental principle. Doesn't matter whether you meditate, don't meditate. We're talking about in your waking state, in your meditation. It doesn't matter. Trying always creates more activity. Fundamental principle. That's just the way the mind works. Well, so to your point, the way to feel calm is not to try when you're feeling agitated at the beginning. So then you just let yourself, do you remember the fourth rule? If you're really agitated, like you said, you're really strongly agitated, okay, go through a period. Remember the fourth rule? The fourth rule in this technique. What's the fourth rule? So I'll give you the hint. When I taught you guys the fourth rule, I came up with this fourth rule. I had already been teaching meditation for about 12 years, almost 12 years, when my mom died. Right? Remember my mom died? You remember the story I told you guys? And what happened? And why did I come up with the fourth rule? What's the fourth rule? Remember that? What could I not do when what happened? First of all, tell me the story. Remind me, you tell me the story, what I told you. When my mom died, what happened every time I had to meditate?
You were just rolling, turning and tossing.
No, when my mom died, crying. That's what I was doing. I was crying when I meditated. Okay.
Right.
Could I think the sound? No,
No.
I couldn't because I was sobbing. Right. I am immersed in crying every time I sat to meditate. I could not think the sound. So what's the fourth rule? When in doubt, when you can't, you don't. You can't. And so if you're feeling really, really agitated, it's the same rule applies. You don't worry about the sound. You just sit there in the agitation. So in my case, I sat there in the sadness and the crying and everything. In your case, maybe it's you're just sitting there and you're feeling agitated, and you don't force to think the sound because that is directing, controlling. It violates the no forcing rule, right?
Yeah,
and that will start to dissipate it. Do you remember? I don't know if I told you this. I'm not sure if you were in the class because I more recently started telling this one. So the Joe Namath story. So Joe Namath, those of you who are, some of the folks are old enough to know who Joe Namath was. Joe Namath, you know who Joe Namath is? So tell her who Joe Namath was.
He was a football player. He's a quarterback, right?
Yes.
Was that 49er?
New York Jets.
Wait, he was.
Yep.
No,
but he started with the New York Jets.
Oh, okay.
He's
I didn't realize he started in the
You may have come in later in his career
later.
after he got.
Was he in the 49ers?
He may have been later. Yeah, I don't remember. He went to one or two other teams, but Joe Namath is famous in New York. You go to people who are Joe Namath. You know, anybody football fans who are New York Jets fans. You ask anybody here, who's Joe Namath? If they're a Jets fan, they go Hall of Fame New York Jets quarterback, first Super Bowl win for the New York Jets in the history of the New York Jets. Okay, first Super Bowl. You ask him who Joe Namath was.
No. My dad would have known that.
Oh, he's not alive anymore. You whisper to him and ask him.
Yeah.
But anyway, so.
But I know the name.
Yeah.
And I know.
So that's who Joe Namath is. Okay. My friend Greg, who's on my nonprofit board right now. Okay. Hey, Crystal, good to see you. Crystal's joining. Cool. So Crystal, I'm just telling the Joe Namath story. So Joe Namath, Hall of Fame, New York Jets quarterback, first Super Bowl win for the New York Jets, blah, blah, blah. Famous last play joke, the touchdown, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, okay. My friend Greg, who's on my nonprofit board now, taught Joe Namath this technique, taught him to meditate in 1970 something. Okay.
Huh.
I can't remember, the Super Bowl was like 1968, 69, something like that. He won, whatever. All right. So Joe Namath has got shoulder surgery or some kind of surgery. He's in a New York hospital after my friend Greg taught him to meditate. And Greg and I were living up in Boston. I can't remember if we were rooming together at the time, but whatever, we knew each other. And Joe Namath calls Greg up and says, Greg, I am in such pain. I'm in the hospital. He's had surgery, whatever. And so Greg says, I'll hop on a plane. Don't worry. He takes the shuttle down to New York. To New York from Boston. He goes to Joe's hospital bedside. He's sitting in, the private room with, Namath has a private room in a hospital, obviously. Yeah, right. He's not sharing a room with anybody. Okay. Joe Namath, Hall of Fame quarterback, probably has the room for free, anyway, he's Hall of Fame quarterback. He's sitting there with Namath, and he told Joe, basically, he didn't say the fourth rule, I came up with that, but Greg was smart enough to come up with this himself even back then. Said, don't force to think the sound, just close your eyes and just let your mind be on wherever it goes. That's what Greg said, wherever it goes. Where do you think it went? Went to his shoulder surgery pain, right? Because Namath said, they've given me all the meds, the morphine, they won't give me any more, and I'm in incredible pain still. They won't give me any more pain meds. So Greg sat with them, they closed their eyes. Greg told him that. About 10 minutes later, Namath opens his eyes and goes, that was magic. Like, what did you do? How did that work? Greg said, you did it, like you just didn't force. You don't force against the pain. What happens? The pain dissipates. See, you're feeling aggravated. It starts to dissipate. Don't force against it. That's the thing. So, that's the pain version via thanks to Joe Namath. Greg just told me that story like 6 months ago, recently.
Yeah, for me, actually, when I called Kelvin, I used to wake up shaking. I mean, with tremendous amount of anxiety. Like, I don't know what it was. I just felt that how to live in this world after my mother passed away.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And that anxiety is totally gone from this meditation.
Wow.
So I did feel through, but Calvin, it was so difficult. I mean, it was like deadly
Yeah.
to feel that anxiety.
Yes, it was intense for you initially.
Oh my God.
So you got to remember what gets you there.
Yes.
Yes. So that got there. That's what got you there, this technique. And so you don't want to slip,
Yeah.
because I can't tell you how many students that I have heard from, and they're back with their anxiety because they thought, well, my anxiety went away, and then they stopped. And even like one of my students, I won't mention her name, she said, I know you told me that. I know you told me the story about people who stop and then their anxiety comes back again. And I know I didn't listen. She stopped meditating. And then she said, my anxiety came back. And so then she started meditating again. And now her anxiety's gone away again. She says, I'm never going to stop again. I said, yeah, because the sleeping and dreaming is not enough. She was sleeping and dreaming, not enough. Okay. So, yeah, it's really, really crucial. Thanks for sharing that, Naima. So any of you guys who are on the Zoom call, you want to share any of your stories about the meditation with the folks here who haven't yet learned yet? Anybody?
Yeah. Kelvin, this is Rosary.
Yes.
When we meditate together, you must do something in your mind. You must move some energy around something, because I get great results when I meditate with you that is somehow missing when I do it alone. I don't fall asleep when I'm with you. When I do it alone, I always fall asleep.
Yeah.
But I just don't want to judge. But I was interested to know is, do you do something that we don't know about?
Do something that you don't know about.
Yeah.
Why do something that you don't know about when you meditate with me?
Yeah.
I will explain to you why that happens, Rosary. So Rosary, those of you who just joined, I see Hazel and Gemma and Sharon just joined, which is very cool. Hazel and Gemma are in the UK. So we have people all over the US, the UK, Canada here. And we are in New York together. We're in New York together here. So here we are. There's Erica and Naima. Do you pronounce Naima or Naima?
Naima?
Naima, that's
Yeah.
what I thought. And there's Kelvin. So, well, you guys know what I look like. Anyway, so here's the thing. To answer Rosary's question. So Rosary was just asking, you know, is there something, do I do something different when we meditate together, because it feels different when she meditates with me? I'm not doing anything different, Rosary. What's happening is you're doing something different. And what's happening when you meditate with me, it makes it easier for you. And that's why the easiness and the effortlessness, a couple of double negatives in there, you know, the less effort in the technique, the easier it is, the more you let go. And it's just naturally easier for you, Rosary, and everybody when we meditate together. And we're going to meditate together in a minute. Why? Because, you know, I'm timing everything. I'm doing it for you in a sense. I'm not meditating for you, but I'm timing everything. I'm telling you when to do this and when to start thinking the sound and when to rest and how long. I'm timing the rest period and everything. So it just makes it very, very easy for you guys. That's the thing, you know? So that's the key element, Rosary. And sure, when you meditate with me, Rosary, is it a little bit different also because I've been meditating for 51 years? Yes. You know, okay, but I'm not doing anything different. It's just who I am. It's just me, because I've been meditating for 51 years and I've meditated somewhere around 40,000 times myself, somewhere about 40,000 times I've estimated. Something 40 to 45,000 times I've meditated. Okay, so does that
Kelvin, you're not telling her the other part of your story.
Oh, which part? Which part?
His voice is a big part of why you do it differently. He's got such an incredible voice. We talked about this in another class one time, and a young man said that he just loves his voice. Every now and then, I'll just go to, and this is the beauty of what he offers us. Go get one of his videos. Right. Listen to him in your ear. Listen to him in your room. Let him guide you through the meditation at home. Right. It doesn't have to be a one-on-one. Right. Just, you know, download the thing to Facebook or, you know, go onto his website, but you can always have him to be your teacher and guide you through your meditation. You don't have to do it by yourself. And I used to worry about, oh gosh, I got to time this, or, oh, if I look at my watch, I'm messing it up. Listen, you do it however you need to do it to get through it. And I promise you, I don't know if you were here earlier, I've been doing this for 6 months. The more you do it every day, that you do your 2 times a day, it's like eating, you know, it's a regular part of your day. You do it. And I promise you, it gets easier and easier and easier. I went through a phase where I was like, oh, I don't think I could do it like Kel. I think I need to listen to him. I can't tell you the last time I listened to him. Sorry, Kel, but but I'm able to do it on my own. And you know what? If you fall asleep, that's okay. That's perfectly okay. You've gotten your body and your mind in such a relaxed state. You fall asleep. That's perfectly fine. There's no law that says that's not one of his rules. Don't fall asleep. You can fall asleep. That's cool.
Yeah,
But yeah, the magic is that man's voice.
that's true. That's really true.
Okay, all right. I let you guys can speak about my voice. I hear it all the
And
time.
I second you 100%. It's very calming. Even we have a dog and who came straight to Kelvin and greeted Kelvin as if he knew Kelvin forever. That was like this is grounding energy.
Yeah, animals
Yeah.
like me. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's true. Yeah, the dogs
True, I
come to
mean,
me,
how
they
he's
just
not
roll over.
as friendly as.
Yeah, it's funny. But that's great. Thank you for saying that, Shauna, and sharing that. That's probably also a contributing factor as well. But Rosary, it's all of the above, right?
Oh,
But
thank you.
essentially, ultimately, it's each of you. That's the thing. Each of you can have that level of letting go. And that's I'm an empowering person, right? I'm empowering people to be independent from me. I'm here as, for you guys, and it's lifetime follow-up, as you gues know in the class. So if it's lifetime follow-up means lifetime follow-up. And when I'm on the other side, I'll be visiting you from the other side too, probably.
Of course.
I'll be
Hopefully not during waking hours.
yes, not going. I won't be haunting you. I'll be just, I won't be haunting you. Don't worry. I just, I'll be available to meditate you. That's my point, so there we go. So to the extent that you want to, I won't be like bothering you. Don't worry. Anyway, so seriously, I'm available, right? Anything else, Rosary? Anybody else before we meditate together?
No.
Good. All right, so let's meditate together. And everybody go on mute. Is everybody on mute? Yeah, everybody's muted. Awesome. Good. So we're just gonna sit comfortably first, and you guys know.
Are you comfortable?
All right. Okay, I was just letting Gemma know that we're starting now. Okie doke. Good. So just follow my instructions. I'm going to walk you guys through as usual. You guys know that we don't do this opening and closing the eyes things many times when you meditate on your own. But so I'll time everything. So just sit comfortably first and close the eyes. Let's open our eyes. And again, let's close our eyes. Again, let's open our eyes. So when we close our eyes, naturally feel some quietness inside. Everyone feels some quietness inside. Yeah, good. Let's close the eyes again. Close the eyes again. Again, let's open our eyes. So still feel some quietness inside when we close the eyes, right? Everyone feels some quietness. And in that quietness, you probably had some thoughts, right? Some mental activity. When I say thoughts, I mean any kind of mental activity, doesn't matter what. And you notice how easily, how naturally the thoughts just pop up in the mind. There they are, right? So that's just how easily, just how naturally, how effortlessly we should think the sound. Okay, so this time when we close the eyes, we'll just sit easily. And after about half a minute, start to think the sound in that same easy, effortless way we think any other thoughts, and we'll meditate together. Okay, let's close the eyes. Keep the eyes closed and rest for a little while. You can lie down if you want. I'll keep track of the time. I'll let you know when the time's up. Slowly open the eyes. Easy, comfortable, easy for everyone. If you want to take longer resting with your eyes closed, you can rest longer. That was 8 minutes resting. So feel free to keep your eyes closed. Keep it easy and simple. Make sure you take a long enough rest period, even if you don't feel deep. Always take a long enough rest period afterwards. Doesn't matter, okay? Long enough rest period so that whatever is starting to balance out and release can continue and complete. Also, the rest period helps make permanent the benefits that we get during meditation. It helps the changes that are occurring energetically, physically, brain chemistry, muscular, wherever, whatever level, it helps them make them more permanent, the rest period afterwards. Okay, good, good, good. So I'm just going to say a couple of things before we close. In about 10 minutes, we'll end the meeting, but I wanted to say something about forgiveness from my book, The Nuances of Forgiveness, page 54, if you guys have a copy of the book. And I did this talk the other night at the Norwood Public Library in the town that I grew up in Massachusetts, a longer version of this, but I'm going to give you like a 5-10 minute version, just the highlights of this essay. And you can read the essay itself and also the related essays on love that are in here as well. This is a collection, as you guys know, of 67 essays that I've written over the last 5, 6, 7, 8 years on various subjects, okay? Emotions, life principles, meditation, and spiritual stuff. But the way I talk about forgiveness here may be a little bit different from the way a lot of people think about it. And so I talk about forgiveness in a way that helps us move forward. So that's really the nutshell, essential definition, the way I view forgiveness in this essay. It's not about giving somebody a hall pass for the bad stuff that they did to us. It's not about that. Okay, and it's not about forgetting it, because we never forget. This whole notion you hear some people say, forgive and forget, it doesn't exist. It's a myth. Now, I understand probably what people, whoever came up with this hundreds of years ago, this phrase forgive and forget, probably meant by that is to move on and don't let it burden you. Okay, well, I'm a speaker of English language, and I think we should use correct English. And it's not about forgetting, because if we think about it as forgiving and forgetting, first of all, people are going to say, oh, I'm never going to forget that terrible thing you did. How can I forgive you? And they'll never move on from it. Or they'll think, conversely, oh, I'm such a bad person, I can't forgive that person. There's something wrong with me. They did this terrible thing to me. Why can't I forgive them? No. If they do a terrible thing to you, they did a terrible thing to you. And that's reality. And you're never going to forget it. So forget about this forgetting thing. It's not reality. But can we move forward from it? Yes. And I think that's the thing. Without blame, without guilt, yes. I think we can move forward. Now, whether the other person moves forward, we don't have control over them. But what we have control over is ourselves. So the other thing that I talk about in this essay is the definition of love. And so I think of love, we can think of love in a lot of different ways. I think of love romantically. You know, we get that butterflies, we're really in love with somebody and all of that. That's real, okay? But what I'm talking about when I talk about love here is a little bit different in the forgiveness context. I talk about love in the way that Jesus defined love. And some people may remember this, and a lot of people may not know this definition. But the way he thought of love, he said, it's acceptance. It's accepting the other person for who they are, not who you wish they were. And so love as acceptance is a way that I think fits with this idea of forgiveness in terms of moving forward. So it doesn't mean that we have to accept, meaning, to use my friend Sean's in Hawaii, he's not on the call right now, but I'll give Sean credit for this idea that he shared with me in one of my classes. He said a lot of people think of love and they think of Jesus, the way he talked about love, and they incorrectly, Sean was saying this, people incorrectly think that it means that I got to be a doormat for everybody. That's Sean's phrase, and that's wrong. No, we're not a doormat for people. That's not what Jesus meant when he says accepting them for who they are. What Jesus meant is We're not changing the people. We're not going to change them. They have to change themselves. We can't change them. So that is accepting them. Now, in this essay, I talk about 4 degrees of forgiveness. And the first degree, I'll just talk about the first and the last one, kind of wrap it up here, and you guys can look at this in more detail yourself. Or I'll talk about this, like Peony, you may come to one of these New Jersey talks. We'll talk about it maybe more in one of these talks in New Jersey. But today I wanted to be more of a meditation kind of talk discussion. But the first one, the first degree is the easy one. That's just like, I come to Naima's, condo here, and okay, and the dog comes out, and maybe the dog jumps up on me or something. It's no big deal. It's like, and Naima says, "Oh, I'm so sorry," blah, 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 blah. And it didn't even register with me. He's like, "Oh, it's a cute dog," blah, blah, blah. And so that's the first degree where I don't even notice it. She apologizes, and I'm totally okay with the whole thing. It's no really even need for an apology, but there's an apology there. So that forgiveness is easy, real easy, okay? And then the second and third level, it's like, you okay with it? I'm increasingly intense. I'm increasingly not okay with it. But the fourth degree of forgiveness, that's the one where maybe somebody's abusive. Maybe they're emotionally, physically, mentally, they're a friend, they're a spouse, they're a family member. It could be anybody, a worker, a coworker at work, doesn't matter. It could be your boss, and it's like, no, I am not okay with what you did. I accept. So the way I articulate it here is, I accept what you did as an expression of who you were at that moment. I'm definitely not okay with your bad behavior, and see you later. I'm out of here. That's the fourth one. So you're right? You're still forgiving, right? But you're moving forward in the sense of forgiving. That's how we're defining forgiving. You're moving forward, but you're not okay with it. And so I'm out of here. If it's work, and I've personally been in situations like that at work, where I was like, "See you later," and I don't say "see you later." First, I get my resume together and get it out there, and then get another job, and then now I'm seeing you later. See you later. I'm out of here. Yeah. Peace be with you. Yeah. But that's still forgiving in the way that I am defining forgiving, as moving forward with our lives in a way where, I'm not blaming them, because it is who they are, and they were a jerk, and maybe that's just who they are. I can't change them from being a jerk. They have to change themselves if they want to. So that's the love idea, accepting them for who they are, but the forgiveness idea of moving forward. Okay, so that's maybe a little bit of a different way of looking at forgiveness as a moving forward thing, and as opposed to giving somebody what I call a hall pass for the bad stuff. That I think that's wrong. I think that's incorrect. Okay. Yeah.
I guess, would there be a additional dimension of that? Because if it's acknowledging who they are, accepting the bad, like accepting that was, everyone has lapses.
Sure.
And saying, okay, this is not okay with me.
Yeah.
Then also the other dimension is like, you love yourself enough to actually to claim the power to move beyond that.
Yes, that's a very good point. And that's the last paragraph in this essay is exactly what you just said, Erica just said. Moving on in this way would perhaps be a way to demonstrate not only our respect and love for ourselves, the ultimate in self-love, but also showing our maturity as a soul, living with and relating to other souls in our many and varied relationships throughout our lives. A demonstration to ourselves and to the world that nothing is perfect, nor does anything last forever. So moving on may be the appropriate and healthy thing to do. So look, when I first got married, we loved each other and everything was in synchrony. We were getting everything. 20 years later, not so much. Things can change. People can change. Needs can change. Personalities can shift slightly too. And so it can happen. And so it's not to say that the marriage was a failure because of, blah, 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 blah. No, people change and the relationship can change, and moving on may be the appropriate thing. That's okay. But yeah, it's the ultimate in self-love, Erica. It's, as you point out, a really good point. Yeah. So great to have everybody on today. Really good discussion. And thanks for the folks around the world to be on and on Zoom, and Erica and Naima here with me in New York. And we'll see you guys. We got I'll do another session this week and so forth. Can't remember which ones I said I was going to Zoom, but you guys have the emails, my students, so I'll have to look at my emails and remind myself. But I'll be in New Jersey in person for several meetings this week, starting, I'm taking the train this afternoon. So great to be with everybody, and you guys take care, and we'll talk to you again soon. Okay?
Thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Cal. Take care.
Yep. Great conversation. Thanks for sharing, everybody.
Thanks. Bye.
Thanks.
Thank you.
See ya. See you, Si.